go. Let's give a big thank you to our host. Thank you so much. This is the whole house party concept is very, very democratic. This is what we did I grew up here, but I spent many years in New England, and this is what we did in New Hampshire. I met Hillary Clinton, and I met Howard Dean, and Gloria Steinem, and Madeleine Albright, all at house parties, just like this, where we would get together and you know, small groups like this in order to be able to share what's happening, what's needed, and how to move forward. But I'm Kari Lerner, and I'm your candidate for Congressional District 19. I grew up here in Lee County. I was raised in Cape Coral, and then I moved away to New England, where I raised my family. And while I was in New England, I got, if anyone knows anything about New Hampshire, you know, first in the nation primary. And so it's all politics all the time there. And I was a Republican until 2004. After George W. Bush was reelected, I felt that the Republican Party was walking away from me. Fiscal responsibility and their attitude towards women, it started even before then, but it really became apparent to me. And that's when I started getting involved with the Democratic Party. I learned from the best in New Hampshire because of being the first in the nation primary. We would have all the brightest and best young minds, all the new grads would come and be our organizers. And I watched now Senator Jean Shaheen, the senior senator from New Hampshire. I was heavily involved in her campaigns. It was very, very, very fortunate. And like a lot of you, in 2016, Alan and I, we started canvassing for Hillary Clinton in April of 2015 for the primary, and we're heavily involved. I was the Launch Center Director and Clinton team leader for Derry, New Hampshire, which our office was where the Boston Mayor Marty Walsh sent all his volunteers would come through our office to canvass. They'd come and pick up their walk packs and then go canvass all through the state of New Hampshire. So I really learned a lot about the nuts and bolts of running campaigns, and I was able to observe, in my opinion, what worked, what didn't work, and all of that. Then, of course, the disastrous election in 2016. And for the first 2 weeks, all I could do, I had never watched Game of Thrones before, but after the election, all I could do was binge watch Game of Thrones. Blood and guts and boobs and butts. I just was like, that was it. That was all I could deal with. I wanted to be numb. And then Alan and I, we got up, we dusted ourselves off and said, enough of that. What are we going to do? And we started a monthly gathering at our home. We opened our home up once a month for eating and drinking and mingling for like-minded people, just like you're doing here. And then I ran for and became town chair and built that organization up. And in the middle of all this, one of our state representatives passed. And so we had a special election coming up, and as town chair, it was my job to find a candidate. I beat the bushes, couldn't find anyone. No one was willing to do it because that was a district, believe it or not, even more Republican than this district. This district is considered an R+13 district, meaning Republicans have a 13-point advantage, minimum 13-point advantage. That was an R+20 district. So I said, well, like a lot of, especially us women, we say, well, if nobody else is going to do it. So I ran for state representative using all of the tools and the lessons that I had learned in my years as a volunteer, and lo and behold, I won. And I won against a candidate who was supported by Americans for Prosperity, a candidate who had unlimited money, who had been a state representative before. And it was a very humbling and educational experience for me, and one that I was very grateful for. And I found that as a legislator, I finally found where it was okay for me to be me. I was, I could speak, I could be It was okay to be smart. It was okay to be assertive. Not only okay, but it was great. And in order to win that seat, I had to also consider all of my constituents. I didn't come in with a partisan message. I came in talking about an issue that was relevant to everyone, which at that time, that was child marriage in New Hampshire. I won't go into the details of it, but it was something people didn't realize was even happening. And they tried to brand me as a tax and spend Democrat. And my response to that was, well, they've been in charge for 12 years now. My taxes haven't gone down in yours, you know. And that was a pretty easy thing. But I won and I served. But in this meantime, my parents live here in Cape Coral, and they're elderly. And my mother was diagnosed with dementia. So again, because I'm the oldest of four, we do what needs to be done. Consulted with my husband, we decided to move back to, back down here. Our children were grown, and we came back here, and I came back to serve, knowing what I was coming back to. I knew how conservative this area was. I knew all about the isms, the racism, the sexism, the good old boy network. I had grown up in it, so I'm very familiar with it. But I also had learned while I was in New Hampshire that language matters. The words that you use matter. Because if you look in the history of Florida, the political history, recent history, Floridians don't like words like progressive or progressive. They don't like the word abortion. There's certain trigger words that they don't like. But they always vote for, when you get something progressive on the ballot, returning felons, medical marijuana, minimum wage rate, they vote for it in overwhelming numbers. It's the language. And so that's a lesson that I think is relevant to this campaign. So why am I running? I am running to provide responsible, competent leadership while fighting for those freedoms that matter with integrity and transparency, none of which we're getting from our current representative. And I can talk about competence. People say, well, what do you mean competence? Let's talk about disaster relief, disaster recovery. Our congressman came down here and made sure he got his photo ops of himself passing out waters. But what we needed him to be doing, and what I would do in those circumstances, is hightail it back to DC and get us the resources we need. We needed gasoline, we needed propane, we needed portable cell phone towers. We needed those immediately. I'm not saying they had to get them paid for, but they sure as heck could have worked on getting those, coordinating those resources and getting us a convoy down here to get us those things right away that we needed. So then after then, a year ago, our congressman filed a bill to declare a disaster for purposes of tax relief. There are two different bills actually that are filed. He co-sponsored one and he was a prime sponsor on one. The bottom line is it would allow you to write off your all of your losses that weren't already reimbursed by insurance or FEMA or in some other way. Write those off on your income tax. No brainer. That's not a partisan issue. That impacts everyone, whether you own your home, you're renting. There are an awful lot of people here who can't afford to own their own homes, who lost cars, who lost everything in their homes because they were flooded, or the roof failed, or whatever, had a lot of expenses that they can ill afford. A lot of them didn't even have insurance. I actually was canvassing in Dunbar yesterday, and there was a woman who came to the door, and she owned her home. It was a family home that had been passed down in Dunbar for, she didn't say how many generations, but she had grown up in this house. And Habitat, she had no insurance on the home because she couldn't afford insurance. She had had a double hip replacement and she couldn't work. And she was like, I want to work, but I can't. And so Habitat for Humanity helped her do the repairs necessary on the home, but she still didn't have belongings. She still, and this, so being able to write this off on your, file your income tax, write this off on your income tax, is a big deal. That's immediate. And those are the kind of resources that as our member of Congress, we need brought to this district. I mean, those are just the nuts and bolts, kitchen table kind of stuff. So the bill was filed a year ago. In June, he was asked about it, and he blamed Nancy Pelosi, which I didn't understand because Nancy Pelosi was no longer the speaker. This was on June 28th. And then just a couple of weeks ago, I don't know how many of you saw it, they had a little puff piece on Wink TV where he was saying, I've got this bill and I'm trying to push it through, but the Senate's holding it up. It's sitting in Ways and Means in the House. So, I mean, that's when I talk about competence, that's what I'm talking about. And the other part of it is, as your legislator, your job isn't to go there and file a whole bunch of bills that stand very little to no chance of passing. Your job is to go there, and if you're filing bills on behalf of your district, it's your job to talk to your colleagues and bring them on board and get those bills passed into law. But that's hard to do when you put on your website that you're in D.C. to tear out the swamp thingies, or you're referring to your fellow colleagues using names. I don't know about you, but I find it difficult to want to help a guy out who starts off by referring to anyone who doesn't 100% agree with them, calling them names. And the other part of that has to do with the divisiveness that our Congress, this last Congress, everyone knows, you've heard it 100 times, it's the least productive Congress in decades. Gotten nothing done. The relentless bickering and squabbling amongst themselves as well as against, everyone else. It is frozen the Congress. I'm sure that's a lot of the reason why our bill hasn't gotten passed, because that would be a bipartisan bill. And yet they're too busy trying to figure out who they're going to investigate or impeach next to take care of the work, what's needed for the American people. And there's something I talk about the American people that leads into the freedoms. I think it's really important to talk about the fact that our government is not a college football game where you have I'm on team D and I'm on team R. We are Americans. And we need to remember that. It's hard. I myself have gotten very frustrated and maybe not use the best terminology, but I can tell you from today forward that it is my goal to be receptive, to try to meet people where they are, try to have a better understanding of what is the motivation behind where they're standing. And most of the time it's fear. Most of the time it's fear. And right now we have good reason to fear because our allies as well as our enemies are watching this 118th Congress as they bicker and are basically unable to function. The government, our government right now is not functioning. And if you think about it, it's really, really important that we take back the House. Because look at who's Speaker right now. With Johnson as Speaker, he was one of the architects of the scheme to not certify the election. Just yesterday, Axios had an interview with Byron Donalds, my opponent, where he said if he was vice president in 2028, he wouldn't commit to certifying an election if he didn't like the results. The peaceful transfer of power has been one of the hallmarks of our nation for almost 250 years, and it must be preserved. So it makes it even more important that we take back the House, that we challenge these folks, not in an ugly way, just in a very pragmatic, pointing out what they're doing, what they're not doing. We need to challenge these folks, and that's what led me. I was formerly the chair of the Democratic Party of Lee County. Someone said it. I'm sorry, I don't remember who. A role that I kind of fell into. It was not my intent. I didn't come down here wanting to be the chair of the party, but again, I was asked to. And in my role as chair of the party, I beat the bushes. I went to every known Democratic attorney. I spoke to a former diplomat who lives in the area. I mean, I went to a lot of people, and as a person, their response was no. No, it's going to hurt my business. I'm concerned for my family. The attorneys, a lot of them said that they were concerned that their clients would be able to get a fair trial because the judges are all MAGA judges if they ran for office. And to a person, they said, hey, you were a legislator, why don't you run? And I finally said, well, okay, and now I'm in it to win it. A victory is improbable, but it's far from impossible. I've done it before. With your help, we can do it again. But there's more freedoms. There's more. I want to talk a little bit more though about this idea of when I say I'm running to fight for the freedoms that matter. I believe in states' rights. I believe in the states having the ability. I believe in home rule for a lot of things. But I also believe that all are created equal with the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that umbrella of rights needs to be codified and consistent across the United States, so that in any state where you are, the details of certain things may vary, but you still can count on those inalienable rights. And one of the first things that ties into those rights is access to the full range of healthcare options. Yes, that does I am including abortion. My oldest daughter is a neonatal nurse practitioner at Boston Children's Hospital. She saves babies for a living. Wally talked about the Supreme Court of Florida we want a number. Give us a number. There is no number. My daughter's been at Children's for 12 years now. She personally is responsible for saving babies as young as 22 weeks and lost babies who were full term. There isn't a number. What we need to do is trust women and trust our healthcare providers to make the right decisions for that individual. One size does not fit all in healthcare, and we need to get away from this concept of legislators who are not for the most part, there are some physicians in there, but for the most part completely lack the medical training to be able to make these sort of determinations. So, and to kind of tag off of what Wally said as far as abortion goes too, I want to kind of clarify, there are some in the Jewish faith. That's not to say that all people who are Jews believe that life begins at first breath. There are some, but it's a religious issue, and soulment is a religious issue. And that's, Byron Donald signed on to the statement that life begins at conception. That means they want to outlaw the morning after pill. And they call it an abortion pill. The cells just, it keeps them from implanting, but that's an abortion in their eyes. But then he got into a little trouble because he found, and in taking that position, we saw in Alabama how that impacts in vitro fertilization. Well, he got into trouble because buddies of his have children through in vitro fertilization, through IVF. So he goes on Meet the Press a couple of Sundays ago, and he said, well, I support IVF, and I'm not making this up. I support IVF because couples can use it to breed great families.
Oh my gosh.
I think that Southwest Florida deserves a member of Congress who doesn't look upon children as livestock to be bred, or women as brood mares or cattle to be bred. I mean, it is appalling, but I think it's telling. First of all, the fact that you can't support IVF and still say life begins at conception. Those two are not, I'm sorry, they're mutually exclusive. And then the term, it just goes downhill from there. But I think that the fact that he voted against certifying the 2020 election, and his stance on, he's been on the wrong side of all these issues. He has an F from the rating from the Child Defense Fund. All right, so you can't tell me, you can't stand up there and say that he supports families. He doesn't support families. He doesn't support families. And so then you go from there to, I lost my train of thought. The religious thing, freedom of religion. We have freedom of speech, but part of the freedom of religion, he's part of that group also that once they want to dictate what religion, they want to dictate that the United States is a Christian nation. Their version of what a Christian nation is. Full disclosure, I am a woman of faith. I'm an ELCA Christian woman. I taught Sunday school for 9 years. And in my faith, we were taught that it is our job to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, tend to the sick and dying, and most importantly, to love one another. All that other stuff you leave to God. All right? And that is something, I think it's important for you to know that in the interest of transparency, to know that those are that's the basis of my values. That's where my values begin. Does anyone have any questions? I can go on all day. I've got a whole bunch more to talk about, but I'd like to take a quick drink here. Anybody? Yes, sir.
Well, congratulations for running. Unfortunately, I'm an Ohio resident. I can't vote for you, so. I'm just thinking out loud here that I know Byron's on Trump's shortlist for vice president, and that would be really good if he picked him, whatever for you. But
Not gonna happen.
I don't. Who knows?
I mean, he put himself forward to be Speaker of the House, even though he never even chaired so much as a subcommittee.
But you said that there's a possibility
Yes.
to win, and and he was on Meet the Press 2 weeks ago. I was watching CNN last night. They had clips of him on CNN last night.
Mm-hmm.
That old adage, any publicity is good. He's getting a lot of publicity. So what does it take to win? When you're in an R13, what has to happen?
Two things. People in the district need to be willing to come forward and volunteer, whether you live in the district or not. In 2020, we had a lot of snowbirds that came down to help, who were from reliably blue areas, who came down and helped us canvass, helped us do the lit drops Wally talked about during the pandemic, because they knew, they knew that their district was safe. They knew we needed help here. But at the end of the day, I need help with money. I'm getting what they call earned media time. I was on NBC2 last week, the week before, and yesterday Celine MacArthur from Week News followed me all day long. I started the morning off at 7 o'clock speaking at BUPAC, which is a conservative group of business leaders in Fort Myers. I belong to the group, and I spoke at BUPAC at 7. We went canvassing in Cape Coral. We went canvassing in Dunbar, and we went out to Sanibel, took a look at some stuff out there, did an interview there, and I ended the day at the Progressive Club of the Islands thing. She's an investigative reporter, not a beat reporter, so she's going to be putting together a whole thing. And I'm just working to we're putting out press releases, that sort of thing. But we do have a strategy that if we can raise the right amount of money, as the chair, one of the big complaints I heard in the 22 election was, how come we're seeing all these ads? We're not seeing Val Demings or Charlie Crist on TV. How come we're not seeing advertisements for them? And it all boiled down to money. So I have a team that's put together a phased options of how we can get in front of the public, starting with obviously digital media, streaming, cable, and network. I'm not going to go into details on it because it's a strategy that's not really to be shared. But that's I'm not spending my money on consultants. That was one of the mistakes I absolutely respect and admire about Deming. She spent 2/3 of her money on consultants. I'm not doing that. I know how to run a field organization. What we're going to be spending, every penny that we can, is going to go on outreach, visibility. In addition, I'm spending every minute that I can at every event that's out in the public. I went to Kid Fest, I marched in the Pride Parade, I'm knocking on doors, I'm gonna be at the Dunbar Easter Parade, I have gone to, this is I think my 18th house party in various communities. I've gone to art fairs. I'm going to be at the Easter egg roll for the Kiwanis group in Cape Coral. I call it the Cory Booker method of politicking. You know, just you have to be ubiquitous. People accustomed to seeing you. I have attended some of city council meetings when there was something important, you know, that I felt passionately about. I mean, people are not happy with Byron Donalds. The numbers, the registration numbers don't tell the whole story, because there have been Republicans before, when I was trying to decide whether or not to run, there were Republicans that came to me and said, please run, we'll support you. So we're working in Collier County, we're working on a Republicans for Lerner group, that they're willing to, again, step out of their comfort zone and let us know. But it takes a lot of hard work. We need volunteers. We need your time and treasure. We need volunteers. And they're also, you're from out of state. There are a lot of folks from out of state. There is a group in Massachusetts that's working on doing a fundraiser for me in Massachusetts, because again, it's a reliably blue area. Everyone knows who Byron Donalds is. It works, actually, the things that come out of his mouth, it works on my benefit. I mean, when it comes to raising money for people from outside the district. Where in Ohio are you from?
Cleveland.
Oh, okay. I was born in the Dayton area. Family had farms in the Lancaster area. My son's in Grandview Heights right now in Ohio, in Columbus, yeah. So did I answer your question? Is that?
How much money do you have to
As
raise?
much as you can.
As much as I can. I need an absolute bare minimum bottom floor. To win, I need $1.2 million. To do the media campaign, the bare minimum that I need for the media campaign is $300,000. We're not there.
And the outside Democrats will support you based upon your progress as you get through.
Absolutely. That's another thing. Before I ran, I went to DC, and I went to the DCCC, and I went to Emily's List to say, hey, you know, you guys didn't support Florida in 2022. If I'm running against this guy that nobody likes, can I count on support? Emily's List said, you raise $300,000, you'll get an endorsement from us, and that's going to help you raise money nationwide. The DCCC, you know, the DCCC is the DCCC. I know a couple of people that work there. I worked with them when they were lowlings or lowly organizers in New Hampshire, and they were pretty frank with me. The DCCC doesn't have a ton of money. So, you know, they may be able to provide some resources like advertising in Spanish language radio, that sort of thing. But I won't be getting money from them. I'm not getting money from the DNC, and I won't get money from the state party either. They don't have it. It's not that they're withholding. They don't have it. So I haven't asked.
What is Emily's List?
Emily's List is an organization that endorses women running for office. The concept is to help with seed money, to help campaigns make a difference. And they have different levels of